There is a recurring issue which I've been dealing with for many, many years in relation to women being identified as being mentally unwell, which has resulted in claims regarding domestic violence and rape to be dismissed. Many years ago, I worked with a woman who was accused by her husband of being mentally insane. She would actually make comments to the television set, talk to the television set, and he declared that that was her becoming psychotic. Now, my wife talks to the television set. Occasionally I get irritated with the television set, particularly when I'm watching football. Doesn't necessarily mean that I'm insane. It was evident after I'd spoken to this woman on a number of sessions on her own that her husband was using this as a means of controlling her. And the medical profession went along with it. She had a number of diagnoses: bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, and a whole host of other stuff, that when I spoke to her when she was not medicated, clearly was not the case. Now, over the years, over 30 years, I've had experience working with men who have declared that their partners are crazy and women who have been told that they're crazy by their partners. Now, what happens is that many of those accusations find their way into the courtroom, and that there are, regretfully, judges who will take those accusations, those statements from not just the partners but also professionals that are asked to be there as professional witnesses to declare that this person has bipolar disorder or a personality disorder. And so what came to my attention was today there was an article in The Australian, that horrific newspaper set up by Murdoch Press in order to denigrate as many people as they can, particularly those people that sit on the left and those people who are, I guess, advocating for the rights of women. And in this article, it points out that the credibility of women are at risk when they claim rape. And I want to go through just some of the article to explain to you that the definition of personality disorder is as vague at best. There are times when any one of us could be at any given time diagnosed with a personality disorder. When we're under stress, when we've met and confronted a sense of grief or loss, or when we've met with a traumatic event. Any of those reasons and more can cause us to being diagnosed, or to be diagnosed, I should say, with a personality disorder. Lack of sleep is another one which could present that diagnosis. There are many reasons why we may experience that diagnosis. I think it's a stupid diagnosis. I'll be upfront. I don't agree with it. I don't agree with much of what the psychiatric profession declares as being mental illness anyway. But it is used as a tool, as a weapon against women who are confronting domestic violence or who have declared or are accusing someone of raping them. And there was a case in point, which I will now bring up on the screen. So this is from The Australian, that well-regarded Murdoch rag. Credibility brushed over when mentally ill claim rape. This is what the judge says. So judges and lawyers have warned that prosecutors are failing to properly assess the credibility of rape complainants diagnosed with borderline personality disorder and refuse to disclose evidence of mental illness to the defence. Now, what this is telling us is that if a person has got that diagnosis, which is generally, in the general population, is very, very high, and the likelihood of being diagnosed with that is quite great. So, given that, to start with, as our baseline, then there are heaps and heaps of women who would never make it to trial because they've been raped, because they've alleged to have been raped, simply on this basis alone. That if this disorder was disclosed, then the case should never have gone to court, which is crazy. This in itself is crazy. Now, this is a mental well-being problem in itself, the fact that we would assume that because you have a mental well-being issue and it's been diagnosed by a psychiatrist or a psychologist, that for some reason it is reality, because often it isn't. Because also people come in and out of those diagnoses as well. They don't necessarily have a diagnosis of the same. You can go to a different psychologist or psychiatrist at a different time. There was an experiment they did in the UK whereby they had a range of people who said they have diagnoses of certain conditions, and they stood before 4 psychiatrists. And those that people didn't have a condition, they were shown, these people were interviewed, and then the psychiatrists were asked to identify what disorder they had. And they put before them the 5 people that weren't diagnosed with any disorders, who didn't have any mental well-being issues at all. They put them before them, and each one of the diagnosis of the psychiatrists were unable to. They all made a diagnosis which didn't fit with this individual. So the concept that you can diagnose and suddenly that is who this person is just a fallacy. End of story. But here in Australia right now, we have a judge in this particular case, and I would suggest other judges who are probably thinking, well, if someone can be diagnosed, you've got a rape case, it's been diagnosed with a mental well-being issue. You know, the interesting thing is we're not diagnosing the accused as having a mental well-being issue. It is the accuser, the person who's put forward the allegation, they're the one being accused. Not these violent and abusive and misogynist and disgusting men who are abusing these women. They seem to be okay. It's the women. So we're doing this women blaming shit again, which is so inappropriate. I see it in 2 facets around women. Women blaming because they're women, and mother blaming because they're mothers, so that men don't have to take responsibility for their friggin' behaviour. And I'm kind of over it, because we need to make a stand. Us men, in fact, need to make a stand about these terrible accusations that are made towards women. We need to be able to say that they're wrong. And in this case, they're making it harder for women to put forward or to at least receive some justice for how they're being treated by men. A recent rape trial of 2 women was discontinued in the New South Wales District Court after it emerged prosecutors were aware of the complainant's significant mental illness and history of false sexual assault allegations. Now, one of those allegations, and I haven't got any evidence in any of this, was actually about one of the women's allegations was against her brother for sexually assaulting her. Now, there's no evidence here that was true or not true. But I don't know whether she recanted on that at any particular point. However, it does become an issue, it seems, in this particular case. The judge in the case sympathised with the claim by the men's legal counsel that this case appears to be yet another example of a glaringly improbable allegation being made by a gravely psychiatrically ill. Now, I need to say that bipolar disorder or personality disorder, I should say, is not at the chronic end of disorders, even from a psychiatric perspective. So to say that then it is a significant mental illness is wrong, and should is a statement that should never have been made. You shouldn't put them on those sort of categories, but they have. So the criminal justice system by police and prosecutors who are seemingly determined to ignore obvious issues of credibility and reliability. This is what the judge says. So the mental illness becomes, even though it's assessed by somebody else, and can be reconfirmed, restated, if you like, by the accuser, by the person that's been accused. So they can say that this person is crazy, therefore whatever happened to her didn't happen, or it happened under a whole completely different set of circumstances. The New South Wales Director of Public Prosecutions has told the defence that while the Crown does have some knowledge in relation to the mental health history of the Crown, will not be disclosing any private information pertaining to the complainant. There's a clear breach of the DPP's duty of disclosure, the defence said. So their argument was because you failed to disclose what these people's mental well-being was, then that is not in accordance with the DPP rules. So, so what do you have? You have this. So this then gets weaponized against women, and this is the problem. And if this is evident of the way the court system is going to work, then it's no wonder that women will choose not to take matters to trial, because they're going to be, if they go to trial, they're going to be put down and denigrated and yelled at and told that they're useless and worthless and a whole host of other things as well. Never alone, they're going to be told that they're mentally unwell. And it is used by men in order to control women. In this case, it's used by men to avoid going to jail for raping a woman. I think this is atrocious. I think that we need to do something about it. And my job here now is to be able to tell you that these types of allegations are wrong. They are wrong, and we need to be mindful of them. And it's disgusting to think that there's not a counter-argument here. I haven't seen one in the Australian in relation to any of this. I'm making the counter-argument here that these sorts of things need to be taken for what they are, which is the propagation of abusive behaviour that impedes and limits women from taking action against their abuser. So I don't know what you guys think of that. If you've got any comment, please make them below. And if you could subscribe to this particular channel for more information such as this, or you can contact me on this particular email address. So thanks everybody for being with me. Take care, look after yourselves, and more importantly, be safe.